Alrighty, good day, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I am your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and today I have my good friend and mental performance coach, Melanie Mehrabi. How you doing today, Melanie?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Excited to talk to you. We know you and I talk pretty often. Helping you, progress in your career as a mental performance coach. It's awesome to see what you're doing. That's why I wanted to bring you on to talk about your experiences, right? Because you've had a long journey in sports as an athlete, leading up to where you are today. Um, so thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And yes, it's been a long journey. Uh, it's been painful if you count the surgeries and the injuries, but it's all been worth it at the end because I feel like who I am today is totally shaped by who, I've continued to try to grow to be. Without sports or without being an athlete. I don't think the lessons that I've learned throughout my journey would make me the person I am today. So,
I love it.
uh,
I
yeah,
love it.
it's good
So
stuff.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about your journey. So where did it all start for you? As far as like how'd you know you wanted to play in sports, or what sports did you play growing up? And because I know you have experience, playing sports, high school and overseas and college. So talk to us about that.
So, I can remember as far back as when I was like a toddler. I just have always had a competitive drive.
Yeah.
As soon as I used to play soccer, I played soccer for 10 years. I loved it, but as soon as they put a basketball in my hand, it was just a little bit di there was a different love, different passion for it. And that was around when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. Um, After that, I was on club teams. We traveled a lot. And I was convinced that I'm going to be a basketball player the rest of my life. This is what I'm meant to do. Um, what I'm meant to be. It's what I knew. Uh, my sophomore year in high school, I had a friend who was a year older than me, and she did basketball as well, but she did track in the off season. And she was like, "Come on, Mel, let's go do track." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm not a runner. I'm not about to run anything." I was like, "No." She's
Yeah.
like, "No, no, you can there's other events." And that's how I kind of stumbled upon shot put and discus. And ultimately, shot put and discus are what got me my scholarship, got me to college. I continued to play basketball, but shot put and discus paid for me to go to college. So,
I love that. And you went to was it Long Beach State, or where'd you do shot put? Is
yeah,
this
Long Beach State. I went to PCC for a year and then I transferred to Mount Sac. From Mount Sac, I went to Long Beach State. Um, the greatest time ever. Great coach, Corey Lobel. Great program. Overall, it was an amazing experience. Um, I have nothing but good memories from it. And you know, it was just something that was so out of the blue for me. I never thought I would be a shot putter, but I had the ninth overall record at Long Beach State on the
wow?
women's side. Yeah. So it's pretty cool because I saw my life in a whole different way. And that's a team sport. Basketball is all about team, 5 players on the court. There's probably like 12 players altogether, coaching staff, everything. And you go from a team sport where you depend on if one person isn't playing well, right? Um, you have a night where you're good. You can make up for it. You play maybe 3 games a week. You win one, you lose one. You might win all three, and then you go to a completely different individual sport where it's do or die. You only get so many competitions to prove yourself. It was kind of a cool shift. Um, and it was cool to just depend on myself. Um,
Yeah.
it was different.
Yeah, no, and I would love to jump into that. Before we do, so talk to me about your experience playing basketball. I know you've been playing basketball a long time, and you even had a chance to play overseas. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, yeah. I played 3 times overseas in Armenia. Amazing. 2011, 2015 and 2019. In 2019, we actually won the gold for the Armenian Olympics, which was pretty
Wow.
amazing. Yeah. Um, Experience overseas is different. It's much different. Um,
How so? I'm just curious.
so you're from the USA. You're expected, everything we do is different than the way they, the fundamentals we learn, the structure. You would see girls doing things that are so fundamentally out the windows, like it's not something we've learned here, but the
Yeah.
ball would go in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, that's not how you're supposed to take a layup. That's not how we shoot free throws. That's not
Yeah.
how you follow through, or that's not how we rebound. That's not how we jump. It was just different to watch different styles of play from different countries. But obviously, it was USA basketball is just different.
Got it. Got it.
Of
Yeah,
expectation.
that's awesome. Be able to like, go play overseas and accomplish, what you did. Um, I'm sure those memories that, I mean, you're always going to cherish, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
so having played in a team sport like basketball and then going to track and field and doing the shot put and discus events, um, what was your experience as far as going from like transitioning from a team sport to a more like individual sport, right? And like, what are some unique kind of experiences or challenges that kind of come with either one of them?
So going from a team sport where I was one of five other players on the court, right? If I wasn't doing my job correctly, I had somebody to pick me up, or I'd have somebody sub in to come pick up my slack, right? Um, but when you're doing an individual sport and it's just you don't have that luxury where you could depend on anybody else. Yeah, there's a point system and you can win as a team and everything, but at the end of the day, you're walking in that ring and it's literally you versus you.
Mm,
There's no, if I foul, if I fault, that's on me. I stepped out. My body, I didn't counter correctly, or I didn't move swiftly enough through the ring. Um, and you're at the time, I don't know if they're allowed to now. You're not allowed to watch film. You weren't allowed to like record yourself to watch it back in the moment. So it was interesting. You get three times. So every match would be different. Every invitational or uh, meet would be different. You would get three chances. If you were in like the top nine, you would get three more throws. And, that's how you would place. So it would be like dog eat dog. You could be up for 5 rounds. And then on that sixth round, somebody comes up from like fifth place and bam, just beats like two or three people, or even goes all the way up to first. It it like I said, it's just you versus you. You've got to walk in there knowing that nobody else should shake you. It's just you. Yeah.
and that could be very isolating, right? It could feel very isolating as far as especially when you compare being with a team where sometimes and having played team sports myself. um, you have the opportunity, not, no, I'm not saying everyone takes the opportunity, but you have the opportunity to where you can kind of like hide in the shadows a little bit, right? In basketball, it's like five, football, I mean, it's one of 11, right? But if I mean, just like a tennis player or a golfer, it's just you and you know?
Exactly.
And so there's no hiding from that, so,
No, and then you know how they talk about having a role. If you're on a team, there's role players.
uh,
You could be a really good teammate from the bench. You could be a really good two-man, like second person, the Scotty to somebody's Jordan, a Dennis, like there's different roles you can play, but when you're just you've got to be everything and then some in order to bring out the best.
absolutely. And going back to that, your time in track, um, as best as possible, can you explain some some mental challenges, right? That are unique, that were unique to that sport, or maybe something that you've also experienced in basketball, especially now that you are a mental performance professional.
Yeah, so I would definitely comparison was a big problem, like comparing yourself because you're watching other people throw and there's different techniques and you know somebody might get into your head and if they threw just like an inch more than you um you get anxious, you're nervous, your hands start sweaty. I had a really hard time figuring out a pre-performance routine, honestly, for me, because sometimes I felt like, okay, I do better when I'm mad. I gotta pump myself up. I gotta get angry. I gotta get angry. And then there were times where I'm like, okay, this isn't really working for me. Maybe
Mhm.
I should like calm down and like, listen to some Frank Sinatra before I go to compete or something, something a little more mellow. And I really struggled with that aspect is that I never learned what made me, I want to say what made me tick, but I knew that I wanted to be the best. Like there was nothing that was going to stop me from competing at my best level that day. I just struggled with pre-performance routine. And then, I struggled with trying to deal with losses afterwards. Like if I were to get second or if I felt like, I was better and I didn't perform well and somebody outplaced me, that shouldn't have. I might have not reacted appropriately at the time because I was just so frustrated with myself and I didn't know how to control my emotion. I had no control over my emotions. I was like an open book. Whatever you saw is like raw passion, but at the same time, maybe it wasn't the most appropriate looking back.
Got it. And for the record, what was your go-to Frank Sinatra song?
I really like, oh gosh, The Way You Look Tonight.
Okay,
That was
nice. Yeah, I asked because I have a client, another client of mine is also he also plays Frank Sinatra. He's a swimmer, and
Mhm.
before he listens to other songs, but he always has before he goes out, gets ready for his meet. Um, he has to play "My Way" by Frank Sinatra.
Yes, yeah. That one is also a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when you brought that up, that's funny. It's funny, but you brought something up very important, and that is such a very common challenge for athletes and just people in general is social comparison, right? Um, and or peer comparison, however you want to word it, where you're just so caught up in comparing yourself to other people, and it's not just athletes who are doing it; it's everyone. I mean, the majority of people, to some degree. It's like you're looking over, over there, like, okay, what kind of car are they driving? How are they dressed? Or in sports, how do they compare? How do they compare to, where I'm at, and how do I compare to where they're at, right? And that's always been a thing, but I feel like now that we have social media, it gives more opportunity for that, right? And I mean, I know a lot of the younger clients I work with, even just, and not just the youth in high school, but even like collegiate ones, um, they're on Instagram, right? Especially, for example, high school football players or baseball players where, they're posting their highlights on their Instagram, right? Like it seems like their whole social media account it's like a place for highlight reels to show scouts or to show colleges, right? Um, and what's also occurring is that a lot of them, and I've heard, straight from their mouths, they're following other kids, other players their age, and they're kind of looking to see, what are they doing, right? And how many
Mhm.
followers do they have, and all this stuff about their training, this and that, and a lot of times when we do that, we overestimate the other person's ability and underestimate our own, even though it's not realistic, right? So, um, I'm glad you brought that up because it's such a prevalent issue, and so how was your experience with that?
You know, I at the time it was hard, but I think competing today it would be so much harder because of social media.
Mhm.
Social media had just started to really like take place basically. I want to say like 2010 when I graduated. It was fairly new. It was I graduated high school 2010. But 2012, we didn't have NIL deals. We didn't have like any of those things. And now looking, even with athletes and their NIL deals, like you're looking at some people, oh, why is she making more than I'm
Mhm.
making? Am I good enough to be making that much? Should I transfer because this program looks better? Oh my gosh, they've got more resources. Even transfers now, it's because of those comparisons. It's because everything is so out in the open and accessible to us. Whereas I don't want to call it loyalty, but it was just something where it wasn't as popular to, jump ship. Uh,
Yeah.
I think nowadays it's a lot harder for athletes. I was just watching a documentary on Netflix. The Spurs player from France, Wibbly. Wib
Wimbayama. Yeah.
so he said if I stay off my phone and I'm not scrolling, then I have no reason to compare myself or be upset about what anybody is saying to me. And I think
Yeah.
that's a great, aspect to have, but not everybody can have that mindset.
Yeah.
You get bored within 2 seconds. What do? You pick up your phone. Okay, let me see what this person's doing. Let me see what that person's doing. How did they, compete? What are their stats in this meet or in that game? So like I said, back then when I was competing, it was hard. It was tough because it was all word of mouth. When you saw somebody, you would be like, "Oh, that's her. Oh,
Yeah.
she's the one that, through XYZ, coach was talking about her." But now it's like, okay, I see her all the time. I know what her technique is. Like I can have it right in front of me within 2 seconds. So I think it's much harder now.
Yeah, and that transfer portal that's available to athletes now is it's like the Wild West now. It's like, everyone going wherever they feel like they can get more playing time or get more money or both, right?
Or shinier. Grass is greener. Oh, the grass is always going to be greener somewhere else as opposed to where they are, right?
Yeah. And I think when you have that and you couple it with like how we are such an instant gratification society, um, where patience is not as common as it once was, right? Patience as far as like the journey and the growth and that desire to stick it out, like you're talking about with like one team, one school, where you have these. I mean, there's one college player. I think her last name is like Van Lith, she's a basketball player.
Yes,
She's transferred like 3, 4 times, something like that.
yes. He jumped from um LM one school to LSU. She played at LSU.
Yeah.
Now she's
Uh-huh.
at TCU. So yeah, she's already transferred like 3 times. Um,
Yeah.
it all just, like I said, it always seems grass is greener on the other side. Coaches make things a little bit better than they really are until you get there, and then, everything is laid out, and it might not be all roses and rainbows and butterflies the way you thought it was.
Yeah, because I mean, I get how it can benefit athletes. Like it just, if I'm looking from the athlete side, as far as if it's like because this happens, right? For those who don't know, as far as like the recruiting side, a lot of pretty much every coach, right, when they're in the living rooms recruiting, the young players out of high school, they're showing them their best face. It's like they're like on their first date,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden, right, say that player, signs and goes with them and commits to them. All of a sudden, it's like, where was that coach at? It's like,
The honeymoon phase is over.
yeah, honeymoon phase is over. And sometimes it gets to a point where it's like toxic. It's a toxic environment, um, and so I think when you have whether it's a toxic environment or just because I know, and I've heard this time and time again from athletes as far as sometimes coaches are not fair in how they play or like as far as like hey this player is clearly not better than me but it's like a politics thing, it's just a lot of stuff, not just BS stuff that goes on, and so I think that leaves the transfer portal now kind of leaves the door open for athletes to find a better fit, but at the same time, yeah, there is potential downsides to it, and where people abuse it, and I truly feel I love the expression, yeah, sometimes people, they think the grass is greener on the other side, but it depends on where you water it. It depends on where you water it.
Yeah. And I mean, I transferred too. I was at Pasadena City College, and
Hmm.
then I transferred to Mount Sac. I mean, I transferred because I had, again, social media wasn't really big back then. From word of mouth, I had heard that Mount Sac's facility, which, come on now, if you've been to Mount Sac, you know that their facility is like top notch. Um, just wasn't comparable to Pasadena's. Pasadena didn't have a hammer ring. The coach had, the track coach was focused on different things at the time. They didn't have a very stable throws coach. So for me, I had to transfer because I only had one goal in mind, and that was to go Division One. There was nothing else I could see. And I I've told you I got offers from Division twos and NAIAs and out of state schools, but it was nothing where I knew my worth and I knew what I brought to the table and I knew that I was going to be a Division One athlete and that's where I wanted to go. I didn't have one school in mind, but I knew that that's the elite. That was the top of the pool for me, where it was like, if I'm Division One, I'm with the best. So that's where I wanted to be. And that's why I went to community college I transferred. I went from PCC to Mount Sac so I could be with the best.
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like it worked out, right? It sounds like it worked out.
Yeah, it did.
Now, once your playing years were done, and you kind of made that transition out of, being an athlete, how was that transition for you? And the reason why I ask is because, um, when athletes, when they hang them up, right, a lot of them don't do too well. A lot of them have a hard time. And this is anyone, right? Anyone who has done something for a long time, and they stop doing that thing, such as like people who retire, right? It's like they have a hard time because it's like what they've identified with, like with what they've done, and all of a sudden what they've done is no longer there. So how was your experience with that?
It was hard. It was tough. So I graduated from Long Beach State. I had my bachelor's in consumer affairs and I minored in psychology. Again, I was supposed to major in psychology, but the classes didn't fit my practice schedules. So I
Mm.
told my counselor, I'm like, well, put me in something that I can major in. And I had taken so many psychology classes that she's like, well, you might as well minor in psychology because you've taken so many classes already. I was like, okay, just put me in something that fits my practice schedule because I need to be at practice. That's what mattered to me. Looking back, I might have told my younger self to not do that, but at the time, that's what mattered.
Mhm.
After college, I struggled a bit. I would say I was in the medical field. I was working at a surgery center, and it just wasn't satisfying me. I didn't know how to stop being an athlete. That's all I really knew how to be. I continued to play basketball for like a club program, club team. Um, but at the same time, it wasn't the same. You don't have the girls that are disciplined, that will always want to be there, that always want to compete. And I really had to kind of learn how to control my competitiveness, if that makes sense. I had to suppress it a lot because I just wanted more, always wanted to be the best, whatever I was doing. And then if I wasn't getting anywhere with it, um, I would just kind of like sit back and I'm like, okay, maybe it's me that's the problem. I need to take a step back, take a deep breath. But for like 5 years, I struggled until I found sports psychology and I went to I think I was married at the time. We got married, yeah, my husband and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is my calling. This is how I can stay an athlete. And he was like, well, go for it. And, the more I got into it, the more I love it. The more I realized how much I would have wanted it when I would have wanted this information. I would have wanted somebody like me helping me, my younger self.
Yeah.
It was quite a struggle. It's like that identity crisis. Who am I now? What am I doing? Am I really ready to be an adult? What is the meaning of being an adult? Um, you have those disciplines, obviously, where as an athlete, you learn time management, you learn how to build character, how to work with other people. Those are all things that come to you. But when you're not given a schedule anymore, I would wake up 5 a.m., go to practice, be there by 6, go to a class, go to study hall. We had routines, and then that routine is taken away from you. You're like, what am I doing now? I have to create my own routine.
Mm.
I have to, like I said, be an adult now.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, it's every athlete, goes through their own experience and their own, they go through that transition in different ways, right? And so thank you for sharing yours. But yeah, it's when you've been just not just with like track and field or basketball, you were an athlete for so long, and all of a sudden that's not there anymore, right? It could be a shock. I know it was for me. That's where I was fortunate enough to,
Right underneath you. You're like, now you got to enter the world. Like,
yeah,
go work. And it's like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that's why I got into coaching, because to me, like coaching was the next best thing to playing, right? And so that's still, that still get, scratch that itch, if you will, for me as far as being out there and being around sports. Um, but there's still something that's like, oh man, like, I miss being out there, right? That kind of stuff. I don't miss like the 2 day practices. I don't miss all that stuff. But it's like you miss it, but you don't. But no, I mean, and that's where I agree with you as far as working in sports psych, working in mental performance. It allows us to be able to be around athletes. That's when people ask me like, why did you get into the field? I tell them it's easy. It's my two passions in life are helping people in sports. I grew up in sports. I was born into sports. And I have like my calling is to help people in any way, whether it's a mental coach, whether it's a professor, whether it's a coach. I've always been in the service of people. And, I'm at a point now, I'm like, I can't believe I get paid for this stuff, and
Yeah.
it wasn't easy. A lot of years of college, a lot of sacrificing stuff, um, but that's where like when like you were talking about with you as far as, wishing you have someone like I felt the same way. I wish I could talk to little me, little Danny, when I was younger and say, hey, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about having to be perfect. You'll be okay. No one here is perfect, and so get rid of that. So, because I remember all these thoughts, and sometimes especially when I'm working with my younger clients, I'm like, man, I hear myself in them, as far as what they're experiencing, and that's why I feel like I can really relate to a lot of these younger athletes. And I'm sure now, that you were working in mental performance, and you're able to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Um, I was just talking to a water polo team yesterday, and I told them, I was like, I've sat where you've sat. I've heard, the coach speak to me a million times, but sometimes you need another voice besides the coach
Mhm.
because the coach can't always get through to athletes because let's face it, it's just like being a parent. You hear somebody else say something and you're like, oh, maybe that makes sense. Even though my mom or dad said it, because they said it, I might listen to it. So it's
Yeah.
just like being a coach, you have to have like different voices kind of tell you different things and hope, you can get the best result out of your athlete.
Yeah, and that's where the fact that you have experience, playing sports, playing at a high level, I think that gives you, a leg up, on being able to be effective, working with your clients now because you've been there, right? I'm not saying that someone who hasn't been an athlete, can do well. It definitely can, but it's something to where like I was mentioning with my experience and you with yours, having been through these experiences, and gone through the different challenges, it's like, yeah, yeah, I can relate to what you're going through. And I think when I express that to my athletes I work with, when I tell them that, and I never equate my experience because we all have our own unique experience, but I say, yeah, I went through something similar, right? And I could relate, and I could tell that it just kind of eases them a little bit, right? Because I know a lot of them, they come in trying to figure out if they can trust me, if they can trust you, um, and I think by sharing our experience, it kind of helps soften that cushion a little bit and gets them real, oh, okay, they might have an idea, So I think anyone who's out there listening to this, if you're working in mental performance and you have experience, yeah, don't be afraid to share it. Um, and don't make it about yourself, right? Because sometimes we get caught up in our own experience, and all of a sudden, the athlete, the client's like, what about me? Isn't this my session? So because all of a sudden, like, yeah, as mental coaches, we're like, hey, all of a sudden we're like in therapy. We're kind of letting stuff off our chest,
Yeah.
So yeah, and so that's great. So now, being that you're now working in the field of mental performance, um, what are some things that you would tell your former self, the athlete, Melanie, the athlete, when it comes to, um, we'll talk about that transitional period.
I've thought about this before. I've thought about like how I would handle um I was a stubborn girl. Um I all I heard from my coaches, they always just told me you have so much potential. You're full of potential. You're full of potential. And I think that really got to me because um how much potential can I have and how hard can I work until that potential is flourished, becomes something special, right? And I can't, I think since I was like 10, all I would hear from coaches is, yeah, she has potential. She's got a lot of potential. All throughout college, you have so much potential, so much power, your drive, everything, physically, mentally. All right, give me a solution. Tell me how to channel that potential into something that is gonna produce, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's just stayed with me is like, oh, she has so much potential. And it's constantly been something where I'm like, okay, am I reaching my full potential in whatever I'm doing? Um, I guess I would tell myself like it's okay if you feel like this is your best. Stop listening to others. If you are doing what you're doing at 100%, then that's all you can ask for. Um,
Mhm.
Stop trying to be perfect. Take the perfectionism off the table. I don't know if I would listen to my younger self. I don't know if my younger self would listen to me
Yeah, yeah.
just because if like I said, when I've really changed over these past like 10 years since I've stopped being an athlete. If you spoke to any of my teammates, all you'd hear is like, Mel's crazy. She just wants to go out there and she's literally like trying to be the best. She's always trying to one up or trying to add 5 more pounds to her weights just so she could beat somebody. She's too competitive. She's so competitive. She'll do anything to win. Like that was who I am. That's who I am. But with the years, now people are like, oh, she's so calm. Oh, she's like so mellow. And I'm like, "Ah, I wish you could talk to my teammates because they're still my best friends. And they're like, no, Mel's crazy. What are you talking about? I've seen Mel like, hype herself up, just hitting her chest and like trying to get in this game mode. Um, but I think I would just tell myself that you're hitting your potential. Don't worry. If you don't hit somebody else's version of your potential, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just do what you do best. What focus on yourself. think there was so much noise that I was always focusing on that I never got to understand how to focus on myself until later on in life with finding like sports psych and like your eyes just open and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, where was this? Where was all this info when, like I said, when I was an athlete? So I would just tell my younger self to be the best version of you and always put your 100% on the table, not anybody else's 100%.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because anytime you're dealing with potential or this team has has what it takes to go all the way, or anything, anytime there is expectations placed in front of either individual players or teams, um, whether it's the coach, whether it's parents or just general public, um, you put these pressures on these athletes, and you run the risk of that backfiring, right?
Yeah,
Because now you're setting this, expectation up of like, oh, she has so much potential, or this team has, has it all, has what it takes to win the championship, right? And whether it's like the individual athlete or a handful of athletes on the team, all of a sudden, right, these athletes start getting in their heads more, and the moment or like the expectation of I have to live up to these expectations. I have to live up to this potential that people are saying. Um, and all of a sudden, right now, here comes that perfectionism creeping in, right? Here comes that I have to, as I got as, and
I
where,
have to deliver on these potentials. That
yeah,
that was toughest part. I changed my coaches from, let's say, from high school. From the time I was in high school, I changed one, two, three, four, five track coaches, like just shot put coaches. In high school, I had a coach who was the football coach, so I really just YouTubed how to how to throw the shot put, and I learned. My parents, I thank goodness, I had the luxury of them being able to find me a coach. So I learned quickly how to throw the shot put through that. But then PCC, I had a coach. Mount Sac, I went through two coaches. And then finally at Long Beach State, I had my fifth coach. So from five coaches over the course of like 5 years, I literally all I heard was you're just full of potential. You've got so much potential. So yeah, that puts expectations on a kid, on an athlete where it's hard to if you don't deliver, you really could internalize a lot of anger.
yeah. And yeah, just to kind of piggyback what you were saying before, as far as, just be the best version of yourself today, right? And don't worry, we grow from yesterday, and and we worry about today, and and then hopefully tomorrow will work itself out, right? And but a lot of times, yeah, whenever you put these expectations, you're forcing people to live in the future, and that's where anxiety lives. Anxiety lives in the future, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where, yeah, I completely agree. Just being able to be the best version of yourself today, and just be here, because yeah, it's something that we preach all the time, is the importance of being present, right? Be where your feet are, and
Mindful.
be
Just be
mindful. Yeah, all that stuff, right? And letting go of expectations. Like, of course we want to win. Of course you would like to win the championship, right? Like, who doesn't, right? So like, get rid of this whole, take those off the pedestal, the common denominator of every athlete, every team, and let's get back to the process, and just work on that, right? Because yeah, so many people, like players, coaches, at every level, sometimes they fall into that trap, of like, they put that end goal or expectations on the pedestal, and a lot of times it backfires.
yeah. Yeah.
And so it's good that you're able to recognize that now, and be able to help your clients with that, because it's something that you've been through. I know I've been through. It's such a common thing, right? And that's what's tough, right? Especially when you have like another common occurrence, another common challenge that athletes face is injury, right? Because especially when you have an athlete who expects, like going back to expectations, who expects to play and play well, especially if they're like the stud on the team, right? Or it doesn't matter where they are, but all of a sudden, right, that's put to a halt because they got hurt, right? So can you share your experience with injury and how, how you dealt with that mentally and emotionally?
So I actually tore my ACL my sophomore year of high school. Um, I played on it torn for a year. I mean, I'll say this. I think subconsciously I knew it was torn, but I couldn't accept that I wasn't gonna play. So it would be like a random in the middle of a game, I would go down and my knee, I can't explain to you that pain when you pivot and that knee just kind of like slides because my ACL was completely torn. So
Wow.
when I went down one last time in the off season at a club game, I was playing club basketball. I went down and I think that was it. It was June and yeah, I had to have surgery. And my high school coach, it was at the end of my junior year, I had the surgery, June 2007, 2007, yes, or 2008. And my coach turned around and said, it's okay if you don't play your senior year. You might get an offer or something. You have highlights, whatever. And that really, mentally drove me insane. I was like, this guy really thinks that I'm gonna sit down on my behind for a year and just like, I was like, I have goals. I know what I want. And I had the surgery in June. I want to say like June 8 or June 10 because I still have the wristband. And
Mm,
I was back on the floor November. So that's 6 months.
wow.
um Rehabbed, I mean religiously. It was like 3 times a day. I would eat, drink, and breathe rehab. I PT'd. I had a brace. I mean, it was the size, it was a ginormous brace. I kept it on until my first year of college. And, it really slows you down, the brace. Mind you, when the same coach that told me that it's okay if you don't come back, I ended up being the second leading scorer in our league that year, which it was a very difficult league. I think it's the Pacific League, where we live. So it was not an easy league, but I ended up being the second leading scorer that year. When I went to college, I remember one practice. Like I said, that brace really slows you down. And the head coach, I'll never forget the way he looked at me. He said, "For how long do you want to keep babying that knee? How long do you want to keep that knee brace on?" And I looked at him and I'm like, "I had surgery." And he's like, "Yeah, when?" And I'm like, "A year or a year and a half ago, 2 years ago." And he was like, he was one of like he was a jokester. He would say something to you and then kind of laugh it off. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, you're gonna laugh at me? So right in front of him, I took that knee brace off and I threw it to the side and I never looked back.
Wow.
I kept playing. I never even remembered that I tore my ACL because I don't know if it was the way he said it to me. How I just completely was like, okay, watch me. I think that was my attitude throughout my whole life, where it was like, okay, you think I can't? I'm gonna show you 10 ways I can,
Hmm.
even when I'm injured. So I have a torn ACL. I have a torn labrum in my right shoulder, which prevented me from doing snatches in the weight room my whole junior and senior year of college. And that's something that helps te your technique in shot put and throwing and discus and hammer. Uh, what else? I have my Achilles. I tore my Achilles twice.
Mm.
So I think just from every injury, I've learned that patience, patience, and your time will come. The Achilles is what really got me. I'm like, I'm done. It was like a year ago, so this is what I think closed the book on my athletic journey. I was still playing, and I was, playing for fun. at this point in my life, and I was uh, I was throwing a shot put here and there, um, but now I really will just work out in a normal gym. But with those injuries, you know, sprained ankles, more than I can count.
Yeah.
I just was like, I'm gonna come back stronger. I'm gonna come back stronger. I'm gonna make my body ready. Um, yeah. And every time I came back and I showed them that injuries aren't gonna stop me. It's not gonna be something that's gonna um, put me down. It's important to have people around you that like believe in you. I
Mhm.
think. I had my parents. My parents were always my biggest supporters. They always made sure that I knew that nothing could stop me. And I think that's a big factor in why I was able to come back and be competitive and just know my worth, I suppose, like even injured. Like I said, that coach that told me sit out and then you know, my when I tore my labrum, um, they said that you'll need surgery and I'm like I don't need surgery. Like I'm going to rehab it and I'm going to make it stronger. And which I did, and the when I got my next MRI they're like what did you do? And I'm like I rehabbed it. I made it stronger. So just patience and your time will come. Having a
Yeah.
village around you, knowing that you can still come back. It might be a hard time in the beginning, but just that tomorrow's a new day. You get up, you do what you got to do. If you're something's wrong with your ankle, nothing's wrong with your upper body. You can still train your upper body.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with your shoulder, nothing's wrong with your lower body. You can still train your lower body. That was just my mindset.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And honestly, there's a lot of athletes who didn't or don't have the same mentality, and that's okay. It's just because athletes, obviously the severity of the injuries matter too, which you've had very severe injuries yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but and that's where when I've talked to like parents and coaches, I tell them like every athlete's different, right? Some are going to be like Melanie here, some are not. Some are going to take a little bit more time, and some it hits them harder, right? It hits them harder, and they don't have that same kind of competitive drive to like, all right, I'm gonna attack my my rehab just like I would during training, like if I'm training for for throwing or whatever else, right? Whereas sometimes, yeah, sometimes you have athletes who are just they fall into like this hole in the shell, and they kind of disappear into the weeds and just wait till things happen, and and just prolong everything, and so yeah, that's why I was making a point to talk about that and how every athlete's different, and no, so when you went to when you finally got cleared from what we were talking about your it was ACL you said,
Mhm.
um and you came back to start playing sport. How was that experience? Like, do you feel like you were confident coming back in your injury? Was there any sort of doubts there?
There was definitely doubts. I mean, I had been out for like 6 months. I had been around the team. It's so hard to watch your team practice every single day
Yeah.
and you not be a part of it. But I knew the only thing that was going to keep me going, and I truly think my mom knew the only thing that was going to keep me going was being at practice, was
Hmm.
being there and watching and making sure I was still a part of the team and being included as a player, uh, even though I couldn't play. So that was really important for me. It was a lot of doubt. Yeah, I came back on the court and I saw players that I was better than, but they were getting better. And they're younger. I was a senior at the time. My starting position was in jeopardy. It's November. You're right. Well, what no October is when season starts. Back then, November start like right mid-November, that's when season started. So I came back right when season started, and I just had to try to be as unshaken, unfazed as possible. I had to be strong and but yeah, definitely doubt, definitely nervousness, am I going to get injured again? Am I going to go down? What's going to happen? But at some point I thought, okay, if that's what I'm going to think about, then I'm not going to get anywhere. I have to move on.
Yeah. No, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. It's a tough time. It's a tough time you have to go through that. And yeah, I remember feeling the same thing of every time I got hurt, playing football or baseball, whatever I played. It's like sometimes it's like a little guilt, right? Like, man, I need to be out there with my team, and I'm not doing that, or I wish I'm trying to get through, but it's that's where yeah, patience is the number one thing. I preach is patience, and it's so much easier said than done. It's easy
Oh
to
yeah.
tell athlete, oh, just be patient. Your time will come.
He's like,
It's
no,
so
I
much
want my
easier.
time to be now. I want it now.
Yeah, yeah. So now taking all these experiences you've had as an athlete. Fast forward to today, how have you felt like those experiences have helped shape you into the professional you are now as a mental performance coach? And how has your experience been, now as a mental performance coach?
I think all my experiences just make me so much more relatable.
Hmm.
And as I've experienced so much throughout my journey, adversity, whether it's a coach that believed in me, didn't believe in me, whether it was injury, whether it was my struggle mentally, uh, I am just somebody that I've been there and I understand. I can empathize, I can sympathize, I can provide the necessary guidance in order for some other athlete. I just need, if you're willing to listen, I'm willing to help. That's where it's at. Like I said, I was talking to a water polo team yesterday, and I could see the ones that wanted, because the coach had asked me to be there. There were a couple that weren't having it, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I don't need everybody to listen to me, but the ones that do are gonna get the best. They're gonna get the
Hmm.
best version of me. They're gonna get the best, guidance and support. And I, at the end of the day, I've lived it, I've been through it, I know what I'm talking about, and I know how to help. And I enjoy seeing that in athletes. I enjoy seeing another athlete reach their full potential, especially if it's a mental struggle, you know? You can train physically all you want, and you will still get to an elite level. I did. I was there, but I never learned mentally how to control it, how to have that mental skill side of it. But I feel like if maybe I did, I might have gone farther. And I'm just one person. Imagine how many people out there feel the same. So, yeah, I think as a professional, I am just relatable and I can help to the best of my ability if somebody is willing to listen.
I love that. I love that. And that's so that's so true. I mean, just being able to be open and to listen,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, there are people out there, not just what we do, but just in general. Some people want to grow, and some people think, they know it all. Some people's
Yeah.
cup is full. Some people's not so much, and they want more. They want to pour, they want to learn, right? So, and I know that all of your experience, everything that you've gone through, and all the training that you've gone through as well, you're going to do a lot of great things to helping people. As now as a mental performance coach, and I can't wait to hear all the great stories, from all these people that you serve, and so thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your experience, Melanie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again to my guest, Melanie Mehrabi, and thank you for listening in. Okay, so hope you guys take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.